I notice that the river is widening. In fact, the water is getting much cooler now. It's a sign that at last I am nearing the end of my return to Galilee. I have missed the color green. I see more trees, more grass, more clouds in the sky. The air is more temperate. By tomorrow, I should see the lake. I will find out where to go from there, I guess. Will my desert experience be over then? Or are there other kinds of deserts? I long to return to familiar territory, but mostly I long for a return of feeling like I'm in sync with God. How long, O Lord? Coming around again. There is a great deal of difference between believing something still and believing something again. Like returning home after a long trip, or meeting up with high school buddies at a reunion, absence can make the heart grow fonder. Homecoming. In the pre-critical naivety of my conservative evangelical upbringing, I believed because that's what I was told was true. God exists, and He is good. He answers prayer. Yes, no, or wait. Jesus was born of a virgin and physically rose from the grave and will return on the clouds. He walked on water, fed the multitudes, and was thinking of me on the cross. Believing was easy. Then reality hits, and with it a critical chaos. Where is God? Why doesn't He speak? What about when I don't sense His presence? Exactly how did those miracles happen, and why don't they happen now? A sort of postmodern angst causes my sour experience to undermine my simple faith. My world falls apart. For me, the critical juncture is with the accounts of Jesus walking on the water. This is a bit strange, perhaps, but what hits me is this. Jesus is walking on water in the midst of a storm. The waves are perhaps as tall as He is. I try to imagine just how this works, and it brings me to a crisis of faith. Is Jesus walking in a trough down the middle and the waves are missing Him? Is He stepping on the crests of the waves and leaping from wave to wave? Is He hovering over the water? Are the waves smacking up against Him and nearly knocking Him over? The image is distressing to me. I just can't picture it. It was almost the same as I had felt about Santa Claus as a young boy. It was a story that was easy to accept. Santa came on Christmas Eve with a sleigh full of gifts, and he came down our chimney and delivered them. If my sister and I were good, of course. But I began to wonder, we didn't have a chimney. What's with that? How could he get all the way around the world in one night? It was not adding up. My parents countered with some physical evidences, mythological apologetics, if you will. We set out cookies and milk on Christmas Eve before we went to bed. When we woke up on Christmas morning, some of the cookies had been eaten and some of the milk was gone. My parents told me that Santa had appreciated the snacks, but he had been in a hurry, so he didn't finish. That proof of the story sustained me for another year. Then there was my experiential evidence. The night that I saw, or dreamed, reindeer on the roof and footsteps. Yet still the doubts continued. All those Santas in the shopping centers. His elves, Mom said, but they were tall with fake beards. Notes on the gifts said they were from Santa, but they were written in Mom's handwriting. One year, I found presents hidden in my parents' closet. The evidence was mounting against the whole story. The inner dissonance now brought a new crisis. Do I mention my doubts? I'm pretty sure the whole thing is not true, in spite of the milk and cookies, and in spite of my experience that one night. But if I say it out loud, the entire Christmas season could come crashing down. No more presents? No more tree? I kept my doubts to myself for another year. At last, I decided to take the risk and mention my doubts. At bedtime one night, a few days before Christmas, I asked, "Mom, is there really a Santa Claus?" Wisely, my mother asks, "What do you think?" She had used this technique before. I hadn't recognized it for what it was, a ploy to let me continue believing if I chose to. "I think that you and Dad are Santa." There, I had said the dreadful words. To my surprise, my mom simply winks and says, "Yes, but it sure is a fun game, isn't it?" "Yeah. Good night. Sleep tight." "Good night, Mom." That's it? My big crisis, and that's all that became of it. We continued to bake cookies for Santa and have them half-eaten, and we continued to receive gifts marked as if from him, and we watched the specials and read the books and told the story as if it were still true, even though we all knew it wasn't, really. Only, as we told the story and went through the motions, we did so with a knowing twinkle in our eyes. No need to spoil the fun, especially for the little ones. Peter wants to join Jesus walking on the water. Jesus invites him to come. But the Bible says that when Peter sees the wind and the waves, he begins to sink. I am like Peter. The wind and the waves are what mess me up in that story. I can imagine Jesus taking advantage of surface tension on a smooth sea, but the wind and the waves cause me to sink. As he sinks, Pete cries out, "Lord, save me!" And Jesus does. He rebukes Simon, calls him by his old name, Simon, for his lack of faith, joins the disciples in the boat, calms the sea, brings the boat to shore. The disciples are amazed that he has power over nature. There's the story, and all of its variations. The point is, Jesus is God. He alone has power over nature. If I get distracted by the apparent physical impossibilities, I sink, but Jesus is willing to save me. While I stumble over the details of the story, the point of the event is still the same, and nothing has changed, really. The point of the Santa story is not a noble one particularly, but the account of Jesus walking on the water is much more poignant. When I come out and tell the Lord that I have doubts about how it works, I find that he understands, and he allows me to live with my practical doubts. But still, he doesn't supply me with an answer to my question. My simple faith has grown up, I guess. I've come back around to a sort of post-critical naivety. I might not be able to feel God or hear him right now. I can't explain injustice or hypocrisy or unanswered prayer. I don't have the same easy faith that I had then. But somehow I choose to believe anyway. I take the leap of faith. I know that I know that I know. I return to my childlike simple faith with a bit more adult pain behind it. Jesus shows his followers a little child. Of such is the kingdom of heaven, he says. So, how will I apply my post-critical, postmodern, ancient future faith? Lay hands on children and bless them. They are the model of taking God at his word. Return to Neverland. Recapture the wonder of it all. Innocent, pure, naive. Believe again.